Thank you. My name is Sue Francis and I'm the chair of this panel. The panel is currently streaming from the council offices in McMahon Street, Hurstville. The panel members who make up the panel today are Paul Vergotis, expert panel member, Milan Maricek, expert panel member, replacing Marcus Sainsbury due to unavailability, and George Vardas being the community representative on the panel. We are the panel have been appointed by the Minister for Planning to determine specified development applications, including the development applications that are on the agenda today under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Now, before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of the panel the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being broadcast as that of the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm also I want to advise you under the provisions of the Act, this meeting is being live streamed and will be made available on Council's website. And in accordance with the revised meeting protocols during COVID-19, interested parties wishing to make representation to the panel were requested to register a summary of their interests. And a total of 10 registrations were received and forwarded to the panel. The panel have reviewed the registrations and advised the council officers they wish to hear oral submissions from the following persons who will be called during the course of the meeting in order of the items as published on council's website. So for item one, which is 87 Waniora Road, Hurstville, I have Peter Lonergan to speak. In relation to the second item, which is 21 Hogman Street, Kogarah, I have Jeff Baker, Mark Anthony, Raimundo and Michael Muir. For 46 to 48 Lawrence Street, Peakhurst, I have Carolyn Howell, Olivia Page, William Phelps, Gareth Collins and Angelica Camperos. And for the last item on the agenda, which is 2733 Nielsen Avenue, Carlton, I have Jim Apostolous. Oh, apologies. Now, the panel have received completed assessment forms from council staff for the 4 applications, and the panel have undertaken site inspections of those matters. And we'll be dealing with them in the order I just mentioned. As required by the Local Planning Panel Code of Conduct, members are required to disclose any conflict of interest in respect of any matter on the agenda. And for your information, I have declared an interest in item LPP 04422, which is 46 to 48 Lawrence Street, Peakhurst, and will take no part in the discussions or deliberations on this matter. And Paul Vergotis will chair this item. I will actually leave the room. As we progress through the matters on the agenda, only those persons who have registered to speak will verbally be able to make representations to the panel. Each person who has registered to speak is required to limit their presentation to 3 minutes. I would also ask those persons who are invited to speak to the panel by the teams that they speak clearly and of a volume that will project into the speakers to assist those viewing the live streaming so they can hear clearly what is being said. And to manage the live stream process, all speakers should leave their camera and microphone off until their turn to speak. Otherwise, we're going to have what we had at the beginning of the session with echoing. At this time, I remind those people that any defamatory, discriminatory or offensive language used may result in the author being exposed to liability for which council and the panel will take no responsibility. Remember, of course, we are live streamed. Once we've heard from all oral submissions on the particular application, we'll move into the next application in order. Members of the public are free to continue to listen to the broadcast. The determination of the applications will be made in closed session, which is not live streamed or recorded. The determination will be available on council's website once confirmed by the panel and usually within 2 to 3 days of the meeting. Now, that having all been said, we'll move to the first item, which is 87 Waniora Road, Hurstville. And speakers for that are Peter Lonergan.
Hi, panel. Thanks for the opportunity to address this application this afternoon. hopefully you've had a chance to read the submission that we made, the written submission that we made with the application. Is that the case? Because if so, I won't bother sort of going through it point by point.
Yes, we do have it here, and it has been sent to all panel members.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of things by way of introduction that I wanted to point out before I sort of get into the detail, and that this was an application made in May 2021 under the Affordable Housing SEP for a 53-room, I think initially a 57-room boarding house on a large site in Wanior Avenue in Hurstville. And the reason why I'm making a point of the date is because at this time the repealing of the SEP was not even contemplated. And during the processing of the application, as you know, the SEP was repealed. There was some question arising out of a Land Environment Court decision about whether there were savings clauses in the SEP, and that was tested and found to be found that there were savings clauses. But during that phase, we were requested by the council to put in an application demonstrating that we had regard to the new SEP, which wasn't even in draft form at the time. And we gave that to the council after redesigning the entire building, and the council then, a few months after that, told us that that wasn't necessary. But we've been working, you know, closely and productively with the council through this almost 18-month process to get to a report which, when you read the report, it's probably one of the most favourable reports that I've got for a development proposal in years. Almost everything is compliant, and even the 4.6 is for the height variation is accepted by the council. And when you read, therefore, the compliance tables in the officer report, I was astounded that there was a recommendation for refusal, and the reasons for the refusal were that it was considered to be inconsistent with the desired future character of the locality. And as you would have seen in the view, the Waniora Road is characterised by multi-storey, multi-unit residential flat buildings, and probably the only three sort of aberrations to that are the small house on the subject side, the church to one side, and the school to the other side. The zoning is R3, which allows for residential flat buildings, and therefore I find it really difficult to understand how it could be considered to be not consistent with the desired future character of the locality when it appears, to all intents and purpose, to be a residential flat building. Secondly, the second reason for refusal is poor amenity to residents and manager. We can move the manager's apartment very simply to a different place, but we think that the manager's apartment has good amenity, as do all of the rooms. They all have their own bathrooms and kitchens. But the reason is that it's considered to have insufficient separation to the site boundaries, where on one side it's a school and there's nothing approaching the boundary at all, and the church on the other side is a smaller building, and none of the residential units are impacted by the 3 metre plus the adjoining setback to the amenity of those rooms. And the last point is a point of site isolation, which is an issue in the DCP that the council brings up from time to time. But in that respect, and in fact, in respect of the two previous points, these matters are consistent with the SEP, and in fact, the SEP has a precedent clause that says if there are things in other planning instruments that are inconsistent with the SEP prevails. And so certainly in respect of site isolation, the SEP would prevail in respect of our site, and the adjoining site, which is supposedly impacted by the site isolation, is a site that's equivalent to size to the subject site, and therefore could be developed in a similar manner. Mind you, not under the SEP, because the SEP's been repealed, but under the new housing SEP. So either as co-living or a boarding house, depending on what someone might want to do. And further site isolation issue, the owner has made further contact with the owners of the church, embarrassingly asking them if they want to sell their church so that he can buy the site. So, as I said, I'm astounded by the recommendation for refusal because it seems to be contrary to the report, and the three matters that are raised as substantive in the refusal are not substantive at all, and in fact inconsistent with the provisions of the SEP. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Panel, any questions? No? 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 Nothing. There you go. No questions. I think we understand the matters you've raised, and we'll move on to the next item. I will, however, ask one question in terms of some of the design aspects and the concerns for separation. Do you believe there is scope to increase your separation to the church?
Yes, somewhat, but not to 6 metres.
Okay.
But maybe another 1.5 metres could be possible. Yeah.
Okay, and if we were looking at some form of privacy mechanisms towards the school, what sort of mechanisms might be best contemplated?
Well, I think privacy screens, fixed privacy screens, are certainly easily, probably easily conditioned, where the lower ones are fixed to the road and the upper ones are fixed to the sky. But the site, the site is fairly heavily vegetated, and the parts of the school that are visible from the site, it's not really it's really more the entry to the school rather than the sort of active grounds of the school.
I appreciate that. I'm thinking about future use of school land, that's all, because schools are constantly having to utilise their limited land for expansion. That's I'm thinking of the future. Yeah, okay, thank you. I think Paul has a question.
Madam Chair, through you. Mr. Lonergan, you mentioned that there's a possibility of further 1.5 metre extra relief along that southern boundary. How would that be achieved with the current floor layout?
Well, we'd have to alter the current floor layout. But so what we could do is we could turn the units long ways, if you like, as sort of an oversimplification of what I've got in mind, and we'd probably we might lose 1 room per floor in doing that. But I think that's it's not impossible to do it. It's a bit of work, but it's certainly not impossible, and it'll reduce, as I said, it'll reduce the number of rooms, but I don't think it wouldn't reduce the number of rooms to a point where the development was no longer feasible. I think it's manageable in the
So that's a realistic amendment rather than something you would have to get instructions about from your client, or do you believe that that's achievable? Like on a hypothetical, if this application was to undergo some sort of deferment to allow you to do that, is that something that could be turned around quickly?
Yeah, so we talked to the client. I talked to the client when we got the report, and all the way through. So we have lost, I think, 4 rooms from previous iterations of the project. But I talked to the client the other day, and I said, look, we might have to lose a few rooms to get to a point where the panel and the council were more comfortable with the development, because there's no, I don't deny that this isn't this is a large development, but it's large enough to cut a bit here and there to make it more, to make it sort of more, to get a better fit, I suppose, in the context. Obviously, we believe that what we've designed is it's a good total building, and as I said, it's within the statutory controls and the numerical controls of the DCP, and certainly fully compliant with the SEP. But we can sculpt the thing a little bit. And I was thinking more that you guys might sort of ask for some relief on the top, in the top of the building, rather than the full sort of setback, where we set back the upper floor a little bit. But I think that we can certainly handle a setback along the boundary with the church.
All right, thanks, Madam Chair. Nothing further.
Thank you very much. I think we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much. So the next, thank you. The next item is 21 Hogben Street, Cogra, and the first speaker I have is Jeff Baker.
You see me?
Yes, I can see you. Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, if your voice garbled, but otherwise I'm fine. I can understand.
Okay, your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay.
Can I just say, if you have the live streaming on, you will have a problem. Have you got the live streaming? No.
It's a problem.
I wonder if your live stream is also playing at the same time as you're speaking. Okay. We'll carry on. We'll see if we can make do and listen to you. Yep.
Yeah, this problem, I don't know how to deal with it right now. I apologise. As long as you think you can hear me, I'll continue. Is that right? Hello? Hello?
We think it might be your microphone on your laptop, and you've got your speakers on.
Right, so
Perhaps we'll call you on the phone. It might make it easier rather than trying to do it in person. Would it be easier to call you?
yes, please.
Okay, we'll call you. We've got your number. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
That seems better. Although there's still an echo, so do you still have something else on at the same time?
Yes, I'll shut my speakers off.
That would be
That
good.
should be better.
Perfect.
Unknown participant is now
Good, thanks.
joining.
Okay, I'll try to do this briefly. I think the easiest way is probably to use the report from council to the panel. And if we go to just the last few pages, the conclusion and following, I think if I just use that as a structure, it would be fine. The first matter is clause 91 of that document, which talks about an unreasonable intensification of the site. I just point out that we're compliant with the LEP, with the possible exception of the rooftop, and I'll come to that in a moment. And we meet the DCP requirements for setbacks, except on Hogben Street, and I'll also refer to that in a moment. The next part of 91 is referring to character of development in the area and so on. It's a little hard. Council's not very specific about that. They seem to have three objections. One is the not having a 3 metre setback on Hogben, and I'll come to that in a moment. Another is the awning on the rooftop space, which projects to the point where it's visible from the street, and the architectural expression the council wasn't happy about. If we come now to item 93, which I think is listing items in the ADG, I'm a little concerned that this report states a whole range of things which it says are a problem. But if I were to take you to page 71 of Council's report, where it does a detailed assessment of the ADG, it says that it's really compliant in pretty much all respects, except for, well, the first item is the terrace, the unit 112. That, the edge of that private terrace is too close to the building across the laneway. That can easily be fixed by cutting that terrace back and making the outer part of the roof beyond closer than 12 metres to the street non-habitable roof space. There's been stuff about vehicles and bicycles. I'm looking for the next, they're all compliances. Now the ceiling height is that, I think the conclusion is that it's okay. The ceiling height as proposed will not affect its usability or adaptability for various uses. So it seems to be saying compliant. Compliance all the way through, again, until 6 of the studios which need 4 cubic metres in the basement. I'm not sure that's an ADG requirement. I'd have to check the very latest, but we can obviously easily find 24 square metres in 5 levels of basement. So I don't think that's a big deal. Then we get to the modulation and articulation. And I do want to spend just a little bit of time on this. I think part of the problem here is that the elevations are reading as being very flat. But if I take you to the plan, and if you could look at a typical plan low down. I'm sorry? Hello?
No, we can hear you. Carry on.
Okay. If you look at level 2, for example. Now, on Kensington, you can see that the building is not a continuous wall in a single plane. It's actually indented where the balconies are. And those balconies have clear glass parapets. And if you look down on Hogben Street, you can see the building was also indented fairly significantly towards the eastern end. So I just don't understand quite why the building is deemed to not be articulated and modulated. And I think, as I said, part of the problem is when you look at the elevations and the way they're rendered, everything looks the same. But in fact, big chunks of those elevations are set back in relation to the rest of them. Then the rooftop communal open space, we have no choice but to put it on the roof because we've got retail downstairs and people wants that. The objection, and by the way, it's twice the size required in the ADG. council's objection is to the canopy on the roof. That can easily be cut back or repositioned. It's there for shade amenity for the residents, but it can easily be positioned so that it's not visible from the street below. So I think that's fairly easily fixed. And I think that's the extent of the non-compliances with the ADG that I could see in council's report.
Thank you for that. You've had your 3 minutes. I'll just ask the panel if they've got any particular questions of you. Panel members? No, nothing from you. I might ask, you seem to be suggesting that amendments are possible. But this is an 8.2 review. And if we look at the numbers, you've only, do you know whether an appeal has been lodged?
I don't believe it has.
Then you run out of time tomorrow.
I could be wrong about that, and I apologise if I have.
So, I mean, I might agree with you that amendments are possible, but we literally run out of time tomorrow if no appeal has been lodged. So, is there a member of this, would Mark Anthony Raimundo, would anyone else who's speaking know the answer to that question?
Michael Lurg will know the answer.
Yes.
Okay.
Panel chair. My understanding that appeal at this point in time has not been lodged at this point in time.
Okay, well, that sort of leaves us and you in a very difficult position because the application effectively dies tomorrow, unless it's approved today. Okay, all right.
Could I interrupt in here? I'm the applicant.
Yes.
When it was determined with refusal, it was on the 16th of September of 2021. My understanding is we do have until 15th of September to lodge in the appeal, 12 months. Isn't that correct?
Was that the date that the
Determination
it was actually issued? Was actually
That's right.
issued? Okay.
That's right.
All
It was
If
issued
that
on the
was case-
16th of September.
If that was the case, you do have a few more days up your sleeve. Okay.
That's right, and that's why Mark Raimondo is saying if there are minor, he's going to be presenting to see if you may condition it this, we could come back to you on some minor issues within the coming 5 days.
Okay.
Or we're running out of time.
Yes.
100%.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
And that would be part of my presentation. But I'll mute again and I'll leave it to the rest of the speakers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So then in that case, the next speaker is Mark Anthony Raimundo.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and panel members. Thank you for your time. I've recently reviewed the report and understand that there's been a change in assessment officer during the Section 8.2 review, which I understand. However, in reading the report in relation to trying to address the issues, it's understood that council has raised several concerns to which relate to the communal awning. I've just believe that this could be potentially conditioned and reduced in size. So, for example, 1 metre, as a cover in front of the lift overrun and whatnot. Going through the report in further detail, it seems as though that there were other minor issues which we believe may be potentially conditioned or can be addressed in a minor redesign, such as, for example, storage units, storage space for units, as well as additional information regarding non-compliant car parking dimensions. So my understanding is we did have discussions with our traffic engineer, who has said that that can be potentially resolved. In relation to other aspects, such as I guess amenity, in relation to the highlight windows off the corridor, we believe that they are treated with a 2 metre height window, which is fixed. Further to that, if you look at each floor plan and floor plate, it's pretty much 1 or 2 maybe units which would technically walk in front of that access way. So it's not a matter of 10 units or 6 or whatnot, 8 units passing by a corridor in relation to a privacy impact. More importantly, I guess the key contention and concern is in relation to the required 3 metre setback along Hogburn Street. In this instance here, the reason why we've sought this variation here is, look, it was designed to reinforce that corner, essentially hug that corner. We designed it with a kink to line up with the adjoining properties at 13 to 19 Hogben Street. As the panel can appreciate, it is unfortunately probably a bit of a mess in relation to the adjoining properties. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to kind of clean up that corner with a nil setback. It does have articulation and a recess, but not to the prescribed requirement of 3 metres. The reason why we've done that also is we've focused the retail elements towards the northern side, so it gets better, I guess, street exposure and whatnot, better solar access. But also coming back to the ADG, there was concern about spatial separation in relation to the balcony of unit 112. My professional view is that, look, this is relatively minor, given the adjoining properties and development. I mean, next door, I think off the top of my head, number 13 to 19 is only 6 stories high. So even with additional levels above, with that current application next door, it's still going to be no material privacy impact. So in essence, we believe that the concerns raised within the report are minor. The applicant is somewhat amenable in relation to trying to address in good faith some of the council's concerns, and we'd like that opportunity for a deferral or additional or appropriate conditions of consent to be imposed to give us that opportunity. I'd like to note that further that the application was refused 16 September last year, and I think maybe Michael correct me or council can correct me if I'm wrong. I think we tried to lodge it within 2 months. So I think the council receipt date when we lodged it in the planning portal might have been mid-November, 13th or 17th November. So, and technically it was lodged in the council system mid-January. So look, we're mindful of council has been busy and whatnot, but in good faith we've tried to work on what the reasons for refusal were. We did obviously have a meeting with council, and I do acknowledge that there has been a change in assessment officer, but we did try in good faith to address the council's concerns as best we could. But we do also acknowledge that yes, we still obviously sought a variation in relation to the 3 metre setback along Hogben Street. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question? You raised some issue about when the application was submitted on the portal.
Yes.
Which might have a bearing. You said January and then you said November. So did you try in November and get? No.
And Michael can correct me because obviously he did the fees and is the applicant. So my understanding, our application was submitted on the planning portal in November. I told the applicant, look, leave council alone, don't bother them because they're very busy. We followed up, and then the officer pretty much said, look, we'll get onto it, and it was accepted by council, I think, as per the assessment report, 12th of January or whatnot. Yes.
We could I butt in here?
This is what I need to clarify because.
Can I butt in?
No, not for a minute, because there's been some recent case law on lodging on the portal and acceptance, so it can't just be sat. The time starts when it's lodged unless there's some failure. So I'll double check with the council staff as to whether any issues were in terms of the needing further information. Okay. Thank you very much. So Michael Muir.
Yeah, it's me.
That's you.
Thank you. Thank you kindly. Yeah. All right. I'm the applicant, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Well, in September 2021, the DA was determined for refusal, and as a matter of courtesy, we decided to lodge a review with council instead of going to an environment court because we thought that we can address council contentions in the report that was stipulated in the DA at that time. We lodged our plans, as Mark was saying, on the 21st of November 2021, and they were never really registered until January, so they never issued a revision number. They were accepted. They don't show on the portal that they're taking them until they accept them. So they accept them now, and we chased them up in of what's happening. We heard back from council on the 12th of January, and that's when they really asked us to pay the money then. So for reason or another, they said they lost it in their system, nothing happened. So it was about 7 weeks later. So since after that, we had one letter of inquiry from the planner, Lisa Pemberton, who has resigned in June 2022, and that's part of the problem too as well. And since our meeting, we never heard back from council until this week. We had a meeting with council on the 29th of April 2022, and during the meeting, we agreed on amendments with Lisa, and our drawings, the current drawings, reflected this agreement. We disagreed with the urban designer on some setbacks to Kensington and Hogben Street, as the guys has explained. But mainly we have agreed that visitors parking to remain in their location. Bicycles are to be kept in one secured room. Explain that 21 Hogben Street will be the restricted party and they are providing right of access to 19 Hogben Street and not vice versa. So we don't need to get a permission from 13 to 19 Hogben Street. In fact, 13 to 19 Hogben Street needs to get a permission from 21 Hogben Street if they propose the A get approved to park in that building. So they're the one obtaining right of way. They said, "Oh, do you have a permission?" And we explained that. And my understanding, the officers were quite convinced after we left. And we're not touching any walls in 13 to 19 Hogben Street. And Liam, I think, is present in this meeting, and he asked me the question too as well. And we agreed that the retail open space to be scrapped and not to be used. Windows in the up on the hallways to wet areas to remain as natural lighting for natural lighting purposes. And agreed to use a private waste collector. In fact, as soon as Lisa walked into the meeting, she told me at that time that the waste officer has agreed if you want to use a private contractor. The author of this report today made it sound as if the council letters and council contentions in that letter, we did not do anything. The author in some places state that the building does not satisfy waste officer and landscape officer, while it's the same report on page 125, it states that council did not object to landscape. And on page 126, that the waste department did not raise any objection. We comply with the height except for non-habitable area. And unit 112 complies with the height of 39 meters, except for the cover to the balcony, which is non-habitable area. As for storage of studios apartment, each apartment has a 4 cubic storage within the unit, and that was in the original DA, and nobody raised an issue with that. But if you want us, as Jeff was saying, or Mark, if you want us to create storage in the basement too as well, there's plenty of dead area spaces because of the triangular shape of the land. So we could utilize them too as well, and that could be conditioned if after today. The author write too as well, that's the separation of units facing Morford Lane with adjoining building 13 to 19 Hogben Street is 5.8 meter. Indeed, it is 6 meters, and I can understand where this 5.8 meter comes from. And then they're saying it does not comply with the separation. And beside the top roof that's Mark discussed too as well, which he said is above the height of the 13 to 19 Hogben Street, or as Jeff was suggesting, you could make it non-trafficable. At the moment, it has plants in there. And that could be conditioned too as well. Traffic engineer comments on page 124. Yes, we are concede that we agree that we need to amend drawing 103 and 104. And that's very simple. It's really delete the storeroom, that's the car spaces, they comply. And there is some printing anomalies on one of the plans. I think it was drawing 104. And the driveway section, if we'll pick up the correct levels as per the surveyor, in fact, it shortened our ramp by 1 meter, which is to the advantage of the building. And the other issues on the traffic issues, we have agreed with Lisa to leave them as they are. And at the moment, there's an issue of that electrical charging station. This report, it says that we require 7.1 car spaces for visitors. We have 8, they reckon. And we only require 7. I mean, then we could use that visitor as for the charging station. And I cannot understand why wouldn't a visitor's car space overlap with the charging station once it could do that with a car wash. But it was never really brought up as a contention before. And in fact, in Lisa's letter, I would say, in the letter received in March, she did say the charging station at the loading dock, and we did provide that. And then at the moment, the traffic engineer wants to complete car space. Well, originally it was really made, well, in case of somebody doing delivery and run out of electricity, you could charge it temporary in there. That's my case in there. And as Mark is saying, it's back up to you, really. We're running out of time. There's no doubt about that. If you want to do issue the A with conditions, it's back up to you. Or if you want to give us up to 5 days to 7 days, and we could show you how we could do the car park and that roof up on top. Because that's, we believe, the biggest, that's somebody said something about the roof. We received a letter, it was never brought up at that time. All right, thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much. I've just asked the panel if they've got any queries. I think.
Mr. Mer, is it your intention to persevere with this application? It seems that it is.
Yeah, definitely.
But you must understand that you need to take some advice from your lawyer with respect to the jurisdiction that this panel has having regard to the 17th of September cut-off date. Your application was refused by this panel back in September 2021 on the, I think it was the 2nd, and then the notice of determination was issued to you on the 17th. So you have some leeway at the moment. You've got 16 days to consult with your lawyer as to whether or not you're going to file a Class 1 appeal. The reason why I bring that to your attention is that if you want to persevere with this development application and make amendments to it, so it can be then represented to this particular forum, this panel, you need to file an appeal in the court, because after the 17th, this panel does not have jurisdiction to deal with your application. Now, again, I'm not here to provide you with legal advice, but you might want to take that on board and ask your legal representatives to provide you with advice with respect to that. I hear what you say about the perseverance with the development application, and if you were to think about what I've said, then that probably will provide you with ample opportunity to not rush amendments, but rather consider what the council said in its report and come back with an amended set of plans, which then the panel can deal with. But you need to take some advice on the appeal.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, we know we're running out of time. The only thing we were hoping, like even you could issue a conditional DA to as well. I mean, like to fix up the car spaces, they're very simple, and the roof to retract back here is very simple. So yes, I'm fully aware, and if we're proposing, if anything, we said this will get probably within a week, but I think you guys don't meet again within a week.
I
So
think
who's gonna?
that's the problem. It may well be that you could provide amended plans, and I think it would need to be amended plans because there's lots of details that need to change, and they may well be flow-on consequences. But the reality is the panel would not be able to meet in the time frame to deal with the well, one, the council's got to assess your amendments, and then two, the panel's got to meet for it to be determined. So I would strongly urge you to take some advice in terms of your jurisdictional situation with appeals, because potentially if you did appeal, you might ease up on the necessity to satisfy this time frame which you've got at the moment. It gives you a little bit of a leeway.
I understand. Unfortunately, they left it too late. I mean, it should have went in front of you guys a month ago.
But
I mean, the other
it's
possibility
still
would
open
be
for you, but you do need to take some advice if you choose to. It's up to you, but otherwise you might be a bit caught again.
Yeah. Would you consider issue conditional DA?
I think I just said that it's unlikely given the quantum of issues that need to be addressed. They may in themselves be relatively small, but cumulatively they may have some significant impacts. And I don't think we could do that on the fly. But that's not to say that we won't consider it. We will. But I'm just putting on notice that that might prove difficult and that you should seek some legal advice. That's all.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless there's any other questions, and I don't think there are, I think we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And because the next item is the item I'm conflicted with, I will now leave the chamber. Thank you, Paul. Over to you.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Goddess, and I am just dealing with this particular matter as Ms. Francis is conflicted. On our agenda today, we also have a list of speakers. Ms. Carolyn Howe, Ms. Olivia Page, Mr. William Phelps, Mr. Gareth Collins, Ms. Angelica Camperos, and Ms. And that's all. Thank you. Now, I note on the running sheet that all of these speakers are here to answer questions rather than to make submissions. So I'll open the matter up and ask, is there anything that the the submitters need to put to the panel. Do we have everyone online?
Hello panel, I'm Carolyn Howe, I'm representing the New South Wales Land and Housing Corporation. We have got the team online should the panel have any questions of us. We have reviewed the assessment report and the recommended conditions of consent and are accepting of those. Yeah, we thank the council officers that have worked on this since it's been there. There's been a few and thank them for their favourable recommendation. Does the panel have any questions in relation to the application or in relation to Land and Housing Corporation's work or anything I can assist with?
I'll just ask the panel if there are any questions of you, Ms. Howe. No questions to you, Ms. Howe. Ms. Page, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am. Like Carolyn said, the team's just here to answer any questions that the panel may have. No formal submission. We're happy with the recommendation and the conditions.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you, Ms. Page. Panelists? No questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Phelps, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Like Carolyn and Olivia, just here to support the recommendation for approval and answer any questions you might have.
Panelists? No questions. Thank you for your attendance, sir. Mr. Collins.
Thank you.
Mr. Gareth Collins?
Yes.
Again, sir, are you here just to answer questions?
Yes, that's correct.
No questions. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
And finally, Ms. Angelica Camperos.
Good afternoon, panel and everyone. Much like everyone else, I'm just here to answer questions as well.
Well, we don't have any questions for you, ma'am, so thank you for your attendance.
Thank you.
That now concludes that matter. Can I ask if Ms. Francis can rejoin the meeting, please?
It was too quick. I didn't get my discount. Okay, so now we'll move on to the last item, which is 27 to 33 Nielsen Avenue, Carlton. And I have one speaker, who is Jim Apostolou.
Good evening, panel and chair. I'm just here to support the application and just ask if you have any questions. Happy to answer those.
Okay, I'll ask the panel if they have any questions. And they don't. That's too easy.
Too easy.
Too easy. I might get to finish my biscuit now.
Yep.
Okay,
No
well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And have you looked at just whilst you're there and I have time to ask you, have you looked at the conditions just in case there's any issues there?
Yes, no issues. Happy
Fantastic.
with it.
Yeah. Okay, then, on that basis, thank you very much. That was the last item, and we'll close the meeting at 4:49. Thank you very much.